Welcome, Danielle.
Hi there. Hello.
Oh, good. Oh, good. Oh, good.
I'm hopping on early here. Let me put
And
my.
I thank you for that. I thank you for that, Danielle. And actually, I'd like to be able to see if I can try to share my slides. And now that I have someone else on, maybe it'll work. So let me just try this, please. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Full disclosure, I'm going to be in the car, so I won't be able to stay visually connected, but I
Okay.
didn't want to miss it. So
Ah, thank you. Thank you. All right. So let me see my slides. Slideshow, set up slideshow, browse by individual, all manually okay, and then play from start. So, all right, now I'm going to go back to this screen. I'm going to try to share. Oof.
it's still not going.
No, huh? Let's see, documents.
Unfortunately, Martha, I have to step into my car to
Okay.
head to an appointment. I'm sorry that I can't help you figure out the slides.
Well,
Hopefully they come.
that's
But I'm
okay.
looking
Thank you.
forward.
Thank you, Danielle.
I appreciate it. Take
My
care.
pleasure. And I have Phil here, fortunately.
Oh, good.
Enjoy.
Good,
Thank
good.
you, Danielle.
Thanks.
All right, Phil. So I'd love your help. I want to show my slides, my Microsoft PowerPoint slides that you all have. And when I go down to the bottom and say share, which is what I'm accustomed to doing, I'm the host. I go down to the bottom, share, and things pop up. And the first one under screens, share entire screen, and they say no for that. Brave browser unknown, Microsoft PowerPoint. Hello, Rachel, unknown, Brave browser unknown. So then I go to documents, whiteboard, notes, but I don't see any picture, Microsoft OneDrive, Google Drive, Dropbox. I don't have Dropbox. Microsoft SharePoint is, unmute yourself. Yeah, unmute yourself.
Where it was showing share screen,
Yes.
just remind me just of what those options were. When you press on share screen.
Okay, I'm going to go back. So I go to the bottom.
Yeah.
Hi, Rachel. I'm struggling a little bit here with being able to share my slides. Okay, go down to the bottom and say share. And now
Yeah.
there are
Now,
something I've never.
hold on, Miss Martha. So your slides are in PowerPoint, are they?
Yes, Microsoft PowerPoint on my desktop. And I've set them up from the first slide, ready to go.
Yeah. So in that share screen, did you say it shows Microsoft PowerPoint unknown or something? In share screen, what was it saying?
For screens, it says application Windows desktop, exclamation point, sort of no.
So what's the exclamation point no? Does it say no?
It indicates not going to happen. It's not happening. It's a exclamation and warning sign.
Yeah.
I got Microsoft PowerPoint unknown.
But just out of interest, if you click on it, it's probably unknown, so nothing's going to happen. But what happens?
All right. So allow Zoom Workplace to share your screen. All right. Open system settings. Okay, I'm doing that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Underneath Microsoft PowerPoint. And Mara, feel free to chime in whenever you find yourself so moved. All right, let me just see. Oh, God. Are you?
So you got into system settings, yeah? It's taken you there, has it?
Yeah, I guess so.
And are you in Windows or on an Apple?
Oh, Apple.
Okay, fine. So which Windows settings screen has it taken you to? I think I know what might be going on. Which Windows screen is it? So where it says accessories.
I don't see the word accessories. Let me find accessories.
No, sorry, systems. Where it's taken you into systems, has it?
Update Apple ID settings.
No.
Wi-Fi Bluetooth network down the bottom here on my Sonoma version of.
So let me just be clear. Where it says square share screen, it then takes you to your Apple settings, does it, Martha?
Well, when I click on Microsoft PowerPoint, which now looks sort of whited out, but I clicked on it on your suggestion. Now it's sort of more blue. And at the bottom, I say share. Yeah. Allow Zoom Workplace to share your screen. Open system settings, security and privacy to grant access.
I know exactly what it is. Bear with me. I think I know what's going on.
Okay.
So, yes.
Privacy and security. I did do that then. Okay.
Yeah. So in there, you need to go to Zoom, I think it is. Let me just, if you go into your privacy and security.
Privacy and security, yes, yes.
Well, because what it's asking is the Zoom application is asking your Mac,
Permission.
your Apple computer for permission to share this app. So
Okay,
let's
so
just,
what am I trying to find here on the right?
no, I'm just having a look down for you. 1 minute. Location, screen. I might just have to quickly look it up.
And Mar, feel free to chime in.
Absolutely.
She is already looking. Yeah.
1 minute. No. Let me just, oh, bugger, we're almost in there. It's in that, it's in the Apple settings. It's something about letting you share your screen.
Privacy and security. This is privacy and
Yeah.
security. Allow applications downloaded from App Store and identified developers.
Yeah, that's fine because your Zoom came from
Yeah.
the App Store.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that clicked all positive, is it?
It's all blue. It's good already.
Martha, why don't you just get on and take people in? Let me just do a little bit of digging around online, and
Oh,
I'll just
okay.
I'll put my hand up if I hopefully if I find something.
Okay, thank you, Phil.
Martha,
And Mar.
as a backup, do you want to, I mean, one of us could share the slides for you if you don't want, if it's easier for you at backup. But
Yes, thank you. I will do that for starters. Mar, are you willing to be the recipient?
I can do that. I think that you just have to enable participant screen sharing. So I believe
At the beginning, but I'm going to send it to you now so you can see it.
Oh, the new set. Okay. Because I'm not able to share.
Well, you have them, but the PowerPoints, I didn't change them yet.
Oh, I have the PowerPoints.
Yes, you do. So I'd like you to be able to share them.
Oh, yes. So if you go right now, it's disabled. It says host disabled participant screen sharing.
Oh,
So
good.
if you go
I
to the
will
bottom.
in one
Yeah.
second, sorry, but I guess I want to let someone
Oh, yes.
in. Yes, 10 of the hour here, but let me, okay. All right, let me just, yes.
I believe if you go to the bottom and it says share.
Oh,
then
good.
you
And
can
I
make
will do
it.
that in 1 second, but I just want to, let me see. Okay, so let me come back here. Here we are. So now say again, Mar, what do I do? Share.
I believe on your end, on the bar underneath, if it says share, if you're able to click on that and somehow enable participant screen sharing.
On share under participants. I mean, when I do share, I see that dreadful thing.
Oh.
It's not it. That's not it, but something else
Oh.
could be.
Okay, I need to find out how you do that. I thought-
Participant. Oh, Phil has a thought. Go ahead, Phil.
Yeah.
Hi, Gina. Yes.
In your Apple system settings, Martha, have you got that one in front of you, just on your Mac?
Yes.
Where you were, where you went into, what was
Yes.
it?
I have Apple systems, privacy and security. I do.
Security and privacy. If you go to, is there screen recording as an option?
Well, yes.
Yeah. Click into screen recording.
Oh, I just meant that's on my Zoom.
No, so this isn't, if you go on, forget the Zoom for a moment, because
I don't see the word screen recording.
Okay, not in your
screen and system audio recording.
Yeah, go into there.
Go there. Okay, follow the arrow. Okay. A Microsoft Teams Classic, is that what this is?
No, if you got into the screen recording option.
Zoom. So there's something that says Zoom.
Yeah, and has it got a little box to be clicked next to it?
Yes.
Click that box.
I did. And now privacy and security, and I put in my password, and we're assuming
it's asking,
is.
And now you should be able, now you've given it, if you've given it permission, if you pop back into share.
Zoom US may not be able to record the contents of your screen until it is quit.
Oh,
quit and reopen.
That rings a bell.
Phil, thank you. I'm actually going to, thank you. It's now so close to the hour. I'm going to just have Mar, but I got to figure out how.
Yeah. Next to, I looked it up, next to yours on the bottom bar that says share screen for you, if there's a white carrot, like a
Oh,
little
yes.
carrot.
So what happened?
Oh, it worked?
Did you do something? Or
Oh,
did
oh,
I
no.
do something? Or did Phil make me do something? All right.
Do you
Share.
see a little white carrot?
Did you
Oh,
see
okay,
something?
actually, that started working.
Yes.
Must have been Phil.
So I think you might have clicked Zoom's permissions in your Mac.
Oh, well,
So
I did
your
because
Mac is now giving your Zoom app
you
permission to
had me do it. You had me
Yeah.
do it. Bless you. All right. So, okay, now I got to get back to where the screen is. Thank you so much. This is parenthetically, in case anybody's interested, my new refurbished Apple computer after I lost the other one. So I'm still kind of new to this new Apple computer. All right, so let me just see. I want to get back to being able to see everybody. So, oh, I see. So now what do you guys see? I guess you just see my slides and then little versions of us on the side or however it is you set things. Okay, okay, okay. Well, that works. That's gonna work well enough. And you could see that. Okay, good. Well, there's Ed. Let me say hello to people. We'll be starting in 4 minutes. And I want to make sure though, oh, wait a minute. I don't think that I can record this. Something, Phil, in what I read sort of said, and if you do this, then you can't both share and record at the same time. I don't even know what I'm saying, but I don't see the little button I can push to say record.
It looks like it's already recording.
It
Oh.
said that when I opened up the window, it said this is being recorded. You must have
Oh, good. All right. Then I'm going to shut it off and then start it again. Because do you think I'll be able to start it again? Let me just see.
Yeah, you should be able to record it even if you're sharing your screen. That shouldn't be a problem.
Thank you. You guys are so smart. All right. Okay, I'm screen sharing, but wait, I want to stop the recording. How do I stop the recording so I can then start it fresh at 12 noon?
There should be
The record button at the bottom.
Unfortunately, with my screen, it's sort of blocking everything.
So Martha, on the bottom of the screen, typically towards the right, there's a circle for recording. Either it will be visible. Hang on. Either it will be visible, or if it's not, is there another circle that says more?
There's no, yeah, 3 dots. No, if you
Yeah.
click on
You
that,
might need to minimize, if your screen is filling up the whole space, it might just be your visual settings. You might need to kind of minimize
it's not right.
your Zoom app.
I've been recording all of the sessions. And yeah, it said something that made me think I can't do both things here. I do know, because I know I have the little square things, pause, stop, record, start, record. All right, it's important enough to me to be able to record this, that with your help, all of you, please, I'm going to, well, can I minimize? Oh, no, that's not right. I'm going to, am I still here? Oh my gosh, they want to
So
know.
you are recording, Martha. If you want to just let it keep recording, you are recording.
Oh, interesting. And then if I knew how to cut off these ridiculous first 10 minutes. All right, but now I'm just watching television here. Now let me just see. That doesn't work.
You could also just maybe when you post it, maybe just post something like, please start at minute blah, blah, blah.
All right, good. But now I need to get back to my screen sharing. I think you see
Yep, we see your
stream.
PowerPoint.
You do?
yeah. Yes.
Yes, we are on slide 2.
Oh, heavens. I don't see it. All
Oh.
right, so I got to see my own PowerPoint here. Oh, here, that's something. Oh, do you see something?
We see slide 2 right now.
Oh, you see slide
Now-
1 now.
Now it's on
And
1.
now slide 1.
Oh, good. Bless you. Bless you. Okay, well, good. So anyway, welcome. Oh, and we're recording. So we're recording. Anyway, I'll figure out somehow starting at 12 noon. Anyway, welcome everybody. We don't have a case presenter for today, but so I decided whether you like it or not, you're going to be hearing from me. And next week, bless his soul, Ed agreed to step in and to be the case presenter. And quite frankly, and Rachel, and quite frankly, all of the spots are now filled. I'm very grateful for that. So thank you. And this is now being recorded. So I am really hoping that this is my goal, because as we now know, my master spreadsheet, which was to be my legacy for the Stark method of psychodynamic synergy, sort of went down in the ashes. And I'm having trouble kind of getting things back up. I want to be able to have, not as PowerPoints, but actually more as an Excel spreadsheet, 5 columns, and basically a word or maybe 2 for each of the 5 columns, the 5 columns being my 5 modes of therapeutic action. So my goal is to crisp and refine this, but to get it all there and to get the order right, so that as you read it, you can, it makes sense to you. And so I'm eagerly looking forward to input and help. Oh, and I see there should be a chat that you can see, but I can't. Is that right? You can see a chat.
Yes.
You know, Mark, can you, because
Martha.
I don't have what I should be having.
Martha, at the top of your screen, if you move your cursor to the top of the screen, do you see 2 boxes? One says Martha's screen and the other one says meeting.
No,
Oh, okay.
no. So Mark, can you, thank you, Phil, for trying. Can you show this? Oh, dear.
Do you want me to try to share screen? I think if you enable by, but are you missing the bar at the bottom?
Yeah, I'm missing everything.
Okay, let me
I
look
mean,
at how you can get that.
I'm looking at your screen, Martha, and it's because on my Zoom at the top, I've got 1 button for the meeting and 1 button for Martha's screen. So I'm looking at an addition
I've
of the
seen that
clock.
in every other conference I've attended. I don't see that. You are screen sharing, stop share. And then I see a green bar around my slide 1, which is now slide 2.
Could you try hitting escape? I'm wondering if that will minimize your screen window so that you can see the bar at the bottom. I don't know if that will work.
Oh, wow. Look at everybody. Well, hi. I hadn't seen you all before. Oh, that's so good. And even all you people, oh, good. And Jean, all you people, and Stephen is smiling and waving. I appreciate that. All right. Now what? I'm going to enable Mar to show show the slides. How about that? Can I do that?
Yes, if you go to the bottom bar that says share and to the right, there's a little white arrow. And I think once you click on that, you should be able to hit the button to say participant, allow participants to screen share.
I clicked on share. It says 1 participant can share at a time, multiple participants can share simultaneously, and advanced sharing options. Is that about, that's what we want?
That's the right thing. And if you click on the one that says allow participants to share, then I can share.
Multiple participants.
Yeah. Oh, here we go.
Okay.
I can share now. Okay.
You can.
I don't
Oh,
know if it'll be helpful, but let's try. You see,
oh, good. Oh, good. Oh, okay. Thank
does that
you.
work?
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much, Mar. Okay. Okay. Thank you so much. But while I was away, I had the pleasure of seeing you all. Sylvia, hello, Sylvia and Lauren and Joanne and Sanda and Paul again. Thank you. And Gina Scott. Good. And Margie and Nina. Oh, good. Thank you. And Eva, I saw somewhere. Gail. Thank you. Kate. I can't see your picture, but I'm sure you're there. And Fiona, Deborah and Karen and Carol. Okay, good. All right. So I wanted to talk about my master spreadsheet. And can I now see the chat? Because I want comments in the chat. So I'm going to go to chat. Oh, and there's the chat. So please feel free to put comments in the chat. Let me start by saying this is now the Stark method of psychodynamic synergy, a CARES approach to deep embodied healing. And the embodied, on some level, I kind of put in there in honor of Ed Goodbody. All right, so a CARES approach to deep embodied healing. The C stands for cognitive, model 1. The A stands for affective, emotional, but affective. That's model 2. The R stands for relational. That's model 3. The E stands for existential. That's the existential humanistic perspective. And the S, CARES, the S stands for synaptic plasticity, that quantum neuroscientific perspective in my model 5. And it's all about helping the patient evolve either incrementally, sort of step by step, or a quantum leap from less evolved to, oh, can you see me? I can't even see myself. All right, sorry. Can you see me? Oh, there.
Yes, we,
Oh, good. So I'm not very big, but that's okay. From less evolved to more evolved, either incrementally or a quantum leap. So we go from psychological rigidity, copying from ACT, acceptance and commitment therapy, to psychological flexibility or resilience. Or in a more psychoanalytic terms and ego psychology, from defense, less evolved defense, to adaptation, more evolved adaptation, from rigid defense to resilient adaptation. So whatever the starting point, I'm not specifically about diagnosis, but rather there's a starting point. There's an initial level of functionality that will involve a certain level of rigidity and some resilience. So we start where we start, and the goal is to evolve and advance the patient from where they are to somewhat more resilient and flexible. And I have discovered, as a result of all 5 of my models, which we'll get into in a second, that at the bottom, at the end of the day, on some level, it really is about juxtaposing, sort of creating optimally stressful, growth incentivizing mismatch experiences that involve juxtaposing old bad, dysfunctional, rigid defense, old bad, disempowering narratives, distorted, outdated, old bad, as I call it, with new good, more empowering narratives, more resilience, more flexible adaptations, and a juxtaposing of old bad with new good to create growth incentivizing, optimally stressful mismatch experiences. The working through and resolution of which, as a result of the deep psychodynamic work that we do, will either incrementally or more quantum advance the patient, evolve the patient from more rigid to less and less rigid, i.e. more flexible, by working through these mismatch experiences. But anyway, so defense and adaptation. I'm going to define them on these next 2 slides. Many of you have seen these 2 slides, but I just want to get everybody on the same page. And then we're going to my very rudimentary efforts to pull together the master spreadsheet. So please note that I do not limit defenses to the well-known and more traditional ones. At one end of the continuum, you have the low-level defenses. For example, repression, denial, dissociation, splitting, projection, acting out, and somatization. And at the other end, higher level or more mature defenses that are more adaptive and more socially acceptable. As examples, suppression, sublimation, humor, and altruism. Let me be very clear that of course we know that all defenses, oh, I see, I could spotlight myself. Can I spot myself?
you
A
can.
spotlight. I'm going to spotlight myself. Did I? No, I did.
You did.
Oh, do I have a big picture? I don't see me big, but I have a big picture now, and you can see my slides too. Is that a yes?
Yes, we can set our settings to let us see both you and the slides.
Oh, okay. And can I set my settings? Well, I'll just keep it like this. I'm a little person up in the corner, but that's just fine. All right. So anyway, but you can see me bigger, which I think is good. And I got a yes. Thank you. And thank you, Mar. All right. So with it being understood that defenses mobilized by the young child are necessary at that time for survival, and so have an adaptive component, of course. 2 parts both and 2 parts both and is something I'm a big fan of. And then adaptations that eventually we evolve to, there's an element of the defensive in them, absolutely. So it's not just defensive and that's bad and adaptation that's good, but it's a whole kind of mix. But of course, nonetheless, there's at the lower end certain things, and at the higher end are other things like suppression, sublimation, humor, and altruism. Next slide, please. All right, so please Next slide. So let me see. So rather, I define defenses more broadly as speaking to any of the self-regulatory mechanisms that we mobilize when made anxious in the face of stressors, whether the stressors arise from within or from outside, whether psychological, whether physiological, environmental, whatever. And I know that in my psychoanalytic training at the Boston Psychoanalytic, a big deal was made out of, anxiety and how that prompts the ego, made anxious, to mobilize a defense. And, I wasn't really all that interested in anxiety. Not that I didn't have a fair bit of it, but I wasn't really, I kind of anxiety, whatever. And it wasn't until some years later that I got it sort of like, wow, there's something to that anxiety and how we position ourselves in relation to our anxiety is a critically important component of our flexibility in our mental health and our resilience. So I'm suggesting then defenses, I define them more broadly, as speaking to any of the mechanisms that we mobilize when made anxious. At one end of the continuum, what happens, and these are two important words to me, reflexively and mindlessly and defensively, when we are confronted with stressors that overwhelm us with anxiety. And this is something moment by moment that we think about as we sit with our patients. And I refer to these as low-level defenses or rigid defenses. At the other end, what happens more reflectively, not reflexive, knee-jerk reactivity, but reflectively and more mindfully, when we're confronted with stressors that we are more easily able to take in our stride, to which I refer as higher level defenses or more flexible adaptations. And I had a wonderful experience earlier this week with a patient with whom I've worked for a very long time. And she had initially reacted defensively to a situation with her husband and mindlessly, reflexively, and felt terrible that she'd done it, but she sort of just couldn't help but sort of do and say the things she did. But then as she sat about it, she went for a little ride in her kayak, and as she thought about it and processed it and so on and so forth, she evolved on her own accord, although she told me, I hope she meant it, she had me on her shoulder, that she was then able to sort of process it and take it more easily in her stride. So that by the time 4 hours later, she reconnected with her husband, he got in the kayak, it didn't tip over, and she kissed him tenderly and lovingly on the lips, which is very different from what she had done 4 hours earlier. So she on her own had managed to evolve from reflexive and mindless reactivity, defensive reactivity, because it was too much, the anxiety, the disappointment, the pain, the heartbreak, too much for her to handle, to more thoughtful, more reflective, more mindful responsivity, an adaptive response. And I talk a lot about adaptive resolutions. So anyway, so at one end of the continuum, defensive, mindless reactions, defensive reactions. At the other end, adaptive, more mindful responses. Next slide, please. All right, so let's see. So I know that's the wrong weather, but anyway. And down in Florida, we don't even have that. But the Stark method of psychodynamic synergy, a CARES approach to deep embodied healing. Next slide, please. All right, so this is, okay, good. This features 5 interdependent, interactive, and I got this part down fine, but I'm just going to read it to you, and mutually enhancing modes of therapeutic action. They're not mutually exclusive, but the 5 different models will privilege, again, such a ostentatious word, but anyway, will privilege a particular modality, whether cognitive, affective, relational, existential, or synaptic. But of course, all of the different ones are involved in all the modes of therapeutic action. And furthermore, whenever we intervene, therapeutic intervention, it will have elements of everything in it. So it's not like this and this, but mutually enhancing, not mutually exclusive. All of which capitalize upon the use of optimal stress. And when I say optimal stress, I mean just the right balance between anxiety-provoking challenge and anxiety assuaging support. So challenge and support, and sort of like, how do you make it, get it optimally stressful? how do you make it optimally stressful? You don't want it to be no stress at all because there's no then impetus for change, but you don't want it to be too much, i.e. traumatic stress, or to be too overwhelming and the person will simply get defensive, dissociate, do whatever. So you're ever busy sort of attending to the concept of combining homeostatic attunement, i.e. being with the patient where they are, which is more supportive, and disruptive attunement, which is directing their attention to elsewhere in order to create the right balance, back and forth, as you're busy sort of reading the intersubjective field, listening and feeling your way into what's going to be optimally stressful and growth incentivizing. So all 5 capitalize upon the use of optimal stress to incentivize. When I say incentivize, I mean providing impetus and opportunity. Deep embodied healing, more specifically, all of which use the generation and resolution of growth incentivizing mismatch experiences or violations of expectation or prediction errors to advance the patient along the continuum, either incrementally or in a quantum fashion, from rigidity to more resilience. So in no particular order, other than when first I became familiar with each approach. Model 1, I learned about and knew about that when I trained at the Boston Psychoanalytic. So that for me is the decade of 1970 to 1980, the interpretive perspective of classical psychoanalysis. Model 2, 1980 to 1990, the corrective provision or deficiency compensation perspective of self-psychology and other object relations theories that emphasize internal absence of good, or as we will see later, structural deficit. So whereas model 1 is about what Freud called structural conflict, or neurotic conflict, or internal conflict, or as I talk about it sometimes as conflict between an anxiety-provoking, but ultimately growth-promoting yes force, and an anxiety-assuaging, growth-impeding no force. Model 1. Neurotic conflict, they get jammed up, they get stuck. We have slides later, as you know, that speak to that. So whereas model 1 is about structural conflict, when the person is jammed up, stuck. Model 2 is about structural deficit, which means impaired capacity to be a good parent. I will sometimes say mother, I'm sorry, it could be caregiver, parent. It's so often talked about as mother in the literature, and I apologize. So I may sometimes say mother. With apology, so mother around quotes. But so corrective provision or deficiency compensation perspective of self-psychology, such that there's a structural deficit. They didn't internalize enough good parenting. As a result, they have a structural deficit, and therefore the defensive need to encounter new good in the here and now, and thus the need for ongoing reinforcement, validation, and goodies from the outside to fill in deficit. And ultimately, model 2 is going to be about the serial, S-E-R-I-A-L, accretion of new, good, healthy psychic structure or self-structure to fill in deficit or impaired capacity as a result of grieving, confronting and grieving intolerably painful realities. Okay, good. Let me get to that second. Intolerably painful realities about the object's limitations, separateness, and immutability. And as part of that grieving, there will be these adaptive. If you don't grieve, what happens is defensive introjection of bad. But if you do grieve, it's adaptive, as it's called in self-psychology, transmuting, which pretty much means structure building or capacity enhancing. So adaptive, not defensive, adaptive, like a good thing, adaptive, more resilience, more flexibility, adaptive, transmuting, and those of you who know self-psychology know they talk about transmuting internalizations of the good that had been there and is there, despite the fact that there's the empathic failure, the disappointment, whatever. The good news about grieving will be the adaptive transmuting internalizations. So model 2 basically is about, so whereas model 1 is about resolving structural conflict by taming the id and strengthening the ego, or taming these. I just I just unplugged my phone. I'm sorry, I should have done that already. I just hung up on the person who called. Be that as it may. Anyway, so whereas in model 1, taming the id, taming the dysregulated, anxiety provoking, but ultimately growth promoting forces, and simultaneously, that's the horse, taming the horse, and simultaneously strengthening the ego by way of its acquiring insight, Freud, right? Awareness, my word, awareness, Freud's word, insight. Awareness such that the ego is stronger. Tame the id, strengthen the ego, such that the ego, no longer made as anxious, will not just sort of knee-jerk, reflexively, mindlessly kick in a defense, creating thereby a conflict. Rather, will be able to harness the energy provided by the now more modulated, more tamed id energies, harness them, and horse and rider go off into the sunset now in pursuit of healthier endeavors and so on, such that the little kid, Freud says, little kid who used to play aggressively with knives, over time, as a result of taming the id and strengthening the ego, taming the horse, strengthening the rider, giving the rider more experience, as a result of model 1, cognitive interpretations, et cetera, they go off together such that the little one has become a surgeon and with incredible precision is able to do a beautiful job fixing people. All right, that's model 1. Model 2 is serial accretion of new good by way of grieving disillusionment. So model 2 is also about illusion. I know I'm leaping way ahead here, but for some of you, it's like, what? And for others, it's like, oh, so that's what it is. All right, but illusion. So model 2 is about illusion at the end of the day, often, because you're so busy looking for needing new good to get the good parenting you never had reliably and consistently early on. You have the illusion, and it's part of a positive idealizing transference, you have the illusion that your therapist in the here and now will provide for you consistently and reliably in all the ways that your parent early on did not. And so you have the illusion that you've now found what you've been searching a lifetime for. Inevitably, if all goes well, this positive, parentheses, idealizing transference. And as people are getting ideas about what I might want to include in my master spreadsheet, please write them down on your own notes and or in the chat, and I will be eager to hear. But anyway, so in model 2, we have these positive, parentheses, idealizing transferences, which are backdrop, and they're incredibly important. The patient feels held and soothed and understood. But that alone doesn't provide impetus and opportunity, for the most part, to advancing the patient from rigidity to more resilience. Rather, what is the locus of the therapeutic action in model 2? I've said it about 5 times. Grieving. Grieving as you confront the reality of your disillusionment, that your therapist and that your parent, whom you'd hoped and thought, whatever, that your husband, that your child, that your wife, your partner, are not going to be all that you would have wished they could be, and you grieve it. And you really feel it. You confront the pain of it. And I have disillusionment statements to facilitate the grieving the loss of illusion. Illusion is positive misperception. And now we're going to move to model 3. This is negative misperception. Now we're talking distortion. So model 2 is about positive transference, as backdrop. But the therapeutic action involves working through disrupted positive transferences, not negative transferences. And I remember one of my just brilliant supervisors way back when I was training at the Cambridge Hospital decades and decades ago. And Bill Meissner was my supervisor. And I adored him. He was like a Jesuit priest also. And he was simply not judgmental. And he just never passed judgment. So like, even if you said something really good, he never judged it as being a good thing, because he was just completely neutral. He was just very neutral. But the good news is you could say some dumbass thing and he was just non-judgmental and he just answered it. And I remember sort of talking to him about the concept of positive transference and disrupted positive transference as being kind of different, right, from negative transference. And yes, indeed, disrupted positive transference, the reality when you discover that your therapist is not all of who you would have and thought you needed to be able to have in order to go on. That's disrupted positive transference. You work it through. Now, as part of working it through, there may also be the kicking in of a negative transference. Model 3 now, because things can be happening, a lot of things all at once. But negative 3 involves, Model 3 involves working through negative transference, i.e. positive, negative misperceptions, i.e. distortions. But Model 3, which is the intersubjective, so two subjects going in the here and now, the focus is now on the here and now of the therapeutic relationship and what the patient plays out or enacts on the outside as well. But there can be some really good work done. It's hard work, but in Model 3, the focus is more on the here and now engagement between patient and therapist. And what will inevitably emerge, is a good word, emerge at the intimate edge, that's Darlene Ehrenberg's beautiful expression, at the intimate edge of engagement between patient and therapist, when the patient feels safe enough to deliver their demons and their toxicity and their stuff, their charged toxic boluses into the relationship, the induction phase, and then ultimately the resolution phase, when the therapist is able to lend aspects of her own more evolved capacity as an authentic subject to a processing, metabolizing, digesting of what has been delivered into the room, and returns to her as part of the induction phase a now slightly modified charged toxic bolus. So whereas Model 2 is about serial accretion of new good by way of grieving, by way of grieving the loss of illusions, Model 3 is about the serial dilution of old bad, of toxicity, by way of negotiating at the intimate edge. And that often involves projective identification, but not always. It doesn't. There can be milder versions happening all the time where you focus in on, you could say to the person, it would seem that there's a fair bit of tension in here today. That's sort of a Model 3 statement. I mean, so you don't always have to be creating mismatch experiences, but eventually the real sort of change, but you have backdrop and background stuff foundation being laid, so that then there can be the violations of expectation and mismatch experiences. But you could say it would seem that there's a lot of tension in here today, or you might say it sort of seems to me as if I can't get anything right in here today. And with it being understood, because I think just about everything's co-created, that it's a co-created intersubjective dynamic at the intimate edge between patient and therapist. So now we deal with, so whereas in Model 1, and I'm sort of telling you already what my next slide's about, whereas Model 1, the optimal stressor is the cognitive dissonance between yes and no, between anxiety provoking, but ultimately growth promoting yes forces, and anxiety relieving, but growth impeding no forces. Ultimately, the dissonance, the cognitive, it's a cognitive thing, C-A-R-E-S, number 1. Cognitive dissonance is the thing that provides the opportunity, the impetus and opportunity for the working through. So cognitive dissonance is the optimal stressor. That's a really nice line on my chart. In Model 1, the optimal stressor is cognitive dissonance. The optimal stressor in Model 2, which I've said probably about 5 times now, is what's called in the literature optimal disillusionment. But I wanted to start with the letter A, so I'm going to call it affective parentheses optimal disillusionment, working through disrupted positive transferences. That's where the cutting edge of the therapeutic action lies. So far we're good, right? So cognitive dissonance, the optimal stressor, that's going to be one of the lines of my master sheet. And number 2 is affective disillusionment, working through disrupted positive transference. And Model 3 is, and it was somebody I was teaching at Smith College School for Social Work. And this was a long time ago, and I'm still trying to figure out how I could kind of get it right for Model 3. And there's some guy in the back who was so not interested. I mean, he's totally like either playing a game on his cell phone or whatever, talking on the phone with his friends. Who knows? He was so not into it, but fair enough, whatever. So I stand in front of the class. There are a lot of people in the class, and I stand in front of the class and I say, I'm trying to figure out the word for what the optimal stressor would be in model 3. And it has to start with the word relational because it's a relational model. So it just has to. And so suddenly this guy in the back with his cowboy hat on just kind of looks up and says, relational detoxification. And it's like, oh my God, okay, yeah, that's perfect, thank you. Yes, and it could be relational dilution, but I like relational detoxification better. And the image that comes to mind for me is like chemistry, chemistry experiments in high school, 11th grade, and you have blue ink, and then you have a beaker of water, and you pour the blue ink, that's the toxicity, the charged toxic boluses, the pathogenic interjects, many of which exist in pairs when it's relational, but they don't all exist as pairs. Sometimes it's just a charged toxic bolus, but it gets delivered into this beaker of water. And so it kind of turns bluish. But then you take this beaker of water that's kind of bluish and you pour it, okay, good. And you pour it into a bigger beaker of water and it gets diluted. The toxicity is diluted. So serial dilution or serial detoxification, but I'll say serial dilution of the toxicity of the interjects, the internal presence of bad. Model 2, internal absence of good, structural deficit. Model 3, internal presence of bad. And often when we're thinking relational, it's pairs. Though most of the people, many of the people just talk about a superego interject. Freud talked about that as just a single thing, like a critical superego interject. Others came along and focused in more on the relational aspect, dysfunctional relational patterns, dysfunctional relational dynamics, relational conflictedness, because of, in Bill Meissner's words, these interjective configurations. 2 poles, victimizer, victim, abuser, abusee, seducer, seducee, judger, judgee, these pairs of pathogenic interjects that then get delivered, or as I call it in model 3, compulsively and unwittingly, they're not aware of it until we help them become aware of it, compulsively and unwittingly, they reenact these dysfunctional relational patterns on the stage of their life in the here and now. And so model 3, when they do that, on the one hand, we want to run for cover when this happens and they're doing it. And on the other hand, that there's a lot of good stuff that can happen in model 3. And that's why where I sort of think, for me, doing model 1, 2, 4, and 5, I really enjoy doing those. And so it turns out you get paid, which is kind of cool, but I didn't even really need to be paid for that. But in a way, those are like little installments for the model 3 stuff, which is a lot harder. We get paid to do model 3 but when it's done, and it's hard to do, and you make lots of mistakes in the process, but when it's done right, it can be profoundly effective as you do serial dilution of the introjected toxicity by way of using the therapist's more evolved capacity to process and integrate and assimilate on behalf of a patient who truly doesn't know how. The therapist who we hope has been in her own intensive psychodynamic, psychoanalytic psychotherapy such that she has the evolved capacity to process and integrate on behalf of the patient who doesn't quite yet have it. So model 3, intersubjective perspective of contemporary relational theory, where we're not just talking about negative transference. We are, but we're talking about something a little more than negative transference. We're talking about what I call actualized negative transference. So let me back up. Model 1 is a one person. This is going to be another line on my chart. Model 1 is a one-person psychology, the focus being on the patient and the patient's internal world, the patient's, what they're thinking, their psychic landscape, what they're thinking, cognitive, what they're thinking. Let's see, model 1, one person, the patient's, what they're thinking, their thoughts. Model 2, borrowing from Andy Morrison, a 1.5 person psychology, the one person being the patient's affective experience, emotional experience of being there with the therapist, and the half being the best of the therapist. And this is where I always say, well, if you're as a therapist, you're having a bad hair day, maybe it's a 1.25 person psychology, model 2. And if you're really on top of your game, you're an empathic self-object, you're a good mother, you're really attuned, then it's a 1.75 person psychology. So model 2 is a 1.5 person psychology. Model 3 is two-person, two authentic subjects, intersubjective perspective of contemporary relational theory. And it was from 1990 to 2000 that I learned all about that. Stephen Mitchell and Owen Rennick back then, and Jay Greenberg and Jessica Benjamin and Adrian Harris and Darlene Ehrenberg and so on. Those were when I was exposed to them. And so my way of sort of, I wanted to integrate that and incorporate that into my work, my practice. So I put in Model 3. And each time I add a new model, there's a way in which, and I become a little more better, a little more adept. I feel like maybe I should go back and apologize to all my previous patients because I hadn't quite realized. A little bit like when I take my dance lessons, West Coast Swing, from my dear Robert Royston, private teacher, and he taught me finally how to do the spins in the right way. They're an important part of West Coast Swing. And again, I felt like I had to go back and apologize to all my previous partners that had probably thrown them off a little bit when I was kind of wobbling around in a spin. But anyway, we do our best. All right, so that was Model 3. Okay. Positive and negative. So Model 1, what is the role of positive and negative transference? This is another line on my chart. Model 1, positive and negative transference is relevant in Model 1. However, ideally, the therapist has the objectivity of a surgeon, neutrality, objectivity, a blank screen onto which the patient projects negative bad and displaces positive good. So there is positive transference, there is negative transference in Model 1, but it's thought to be a story about the patient and the patient's there and then. And if indeed, and I had a lot of supervisors during my analytic training who were very much, in essence, Model 1. And if, as the therapist of your patient, when they had positive transference, that was good, and negative transference, and you countertransferentially, like, whoa, reacted, defensive reaction, countertransferentially reacted in some way, your supervisor would say, now, get thyself off to thy analysis to analyze out of you your countertransferential reaction of negativity or annoyance or what have you. Countertransference in Model 1, not a good thing, not a good thing. That's Model 1. And by the same token, positive and negative transference are a story about these positive misperceptions, illusions, and negative misperceptions, distortions that the patient has about you, but it's not about you because you're a blank screen. Ideally, obviously, we know that's never really the case, but that was sort of my training anyway, sort of the ideal. So positive and negative transference do figure in Model 1, but they're a story about the patient. And they get worked through by way of interpreting, cognitive interpreting, with some affect and some bodily stuff thrown in as well. But primarily, there's a privileging of awareness, insight, said Freud, and cognition. Model 2, as I've explained, is a story about positive misperception and illusion. I'm not going to in the moment get more into that. I'm just going to say it's a story because it's one of my favorite concepts actually that I've been writing about for decades. But for now, let me just say in Model 2, it's about a therapist who really is not really blank screen, but really is a good mother, an empathic self-object. And the patient, at least during the illusion, positive, idealizing transference stage, does indeed experience the therapist as that. And the question that I'm not going to get to in the moment is, because it's one of my favorites, but I don't have time for that right now, is to what extent is the patient, because of their need to experience now what they never experienced reliably and consistently early on, because of their need, to what extent do they exert interpersonal pressure on the therapist to participate as a new good parent, which would be an actualized positive transference. And I call that displacive identification, whatever. I said I wouldn't get into that. But Stephen Mitchell, when he read my book, he said that was one of his favorite concepts and that was kind of new. That's not really written about. So that's why, in a way, well, now you're going to see like which model does it go into? Model 2, because it's positive, but it involves the patient exerting pressure on the therapist. And so now we do Model 3. So let me do model 3, remind you. And so model 3, it's a story about negative transference, but an actualized negative transference, the patient exerting pressure on the therapist to participate as the old bad. The unhealthy reason being that's all they've ever known. So quite frankly, anything different from that would make them anxious. So just same old whatever. It's familial and therefore familiar and therefore done again and again. Stephen Mitchell's words again. So that's the unhealthy component of the reenactment, the compulsive reenactment or repetition compulsion. Repetition compulsion feels a little bit more like in the head. Reenactment, I like to say compulsive reenactment, because it has to do a little bit more with what gets played out in the actual relationship. But anyway, so the now we have the exerting of interpersonal pressure on the therapist to participate as the old bad object. And now we have what becomes a mutual enactment, and sometimes even a crunch situation, as our dear Paul Russell called it. So it's an actualized negative transference. And the work in model 3 is on negotiating at the intimate edge. So model 1, it's about interpreting. Model 2 is about grieving. This is on the chart. Model 3 is about negotiating. The turbulence that will inevitably emerge when these two authentic people get in relationship and the patient has the opportunity to deliver their stuff into the relationship. Otherwise, they're stuck with it and they just have it inside of them. So they're busy, for example, here's their arm and they're cut. And they're a victimizer with this hand and a victim with this arm. And so in a way, in model 3, which is sort of more, if we have to go with a diagnosis, whereas model 1 is a little more neurotic, model 2 a little more narcissistic, model 3 a little more character disordered / borderline. And now we have, in a way, in model 3, we're almost inviting the patient to become a character disorder, i.e. to deliver one or the other pole, and alternately both, into the relationship itself so that we can negotiate at the intimate edge and serially dilute the toxicity of their charged toxic boluses. With borderlines, they're actually delivering both sides and then split the staff at a hospital on an inpatient unit, say, and the audience gets all split. They deliver both sides. But a more regular character disorder puts out victimizer and then gets you to victimize them in the way that they've been victimized as a kid, or they identify with the aggressor, identify with being the victimizer, and do unto you what had been done unto them. So in one case, it's a direct actualized negative transference, and in the other, it's an inverted negative actualized negative transference. That takes us beyond where we need to go. But anyway, so that's the intersubjective perspective. Model 2 is about absence of good. Model 3 is about presence of bad. Now let's do model 4. So I had done structural conflict, model 1. I'd done structural deficit, model 3, model 2, and relational conflict, model 3. And my modes of therapeutic action, my award-winning, thank you, Jason Aronson, who later then became a dear friend of mine, Jay Aronson. It received the prestigious Book of the Year award, and all the big famous people came, and there was a big fancy celebration, and that was kind of cool. All right, that book was about the first 3 models. But then I had some of my friends and so on, and especially Larry Hedges out there in LA, and he was like, Martha, he had read my material well enough, bless his soul, that he said, you got structural conflict, you got structural deficit, you got relational conflict, Stephen Mitchell's term. You got to have, in essence, relational deficit. And I remember being with him as I'd given a presentation a day long out in LA numbers of years ago. And he was driving me back to LAX, the big LAX. And he said, Martha, you got to have, you got to have. And for me, quite frankly, in that moment, it was more a traumatic stressor than an optimal stressor. An optimal stressor would have provided impetus and opportunity. A traumatic stressor would be too much and you get a little defensive. So I got a little defensive. But so I put the challenge to him and I said, hey, listen, we got to be able to have the defense that starts with the letter R, because all of my other 3 models, the defenses start with R, which I have not emphasized, but this is also on my spreadsheet. Model 1, it's resistance. That was easy. I just copied off of Freud. Resistance is the defense. And you want to evolve to an adaptation. That's the whole thing. I explained that at the beginning. And you evolve to the adaptation being, well, insight is what Freud said, but that starts with an I, and I need it to start with an A. So awareness, that should work, self-reflective awareness. So model 1, in essence, by working through cognitive dissonance, which is the optimal stressor, you evolve from defense, resistance, to adaptation, awareness. Model 2, the optimal stressor is affective disillusionment, which enables you to evolve from my concept of relentless hope, starts with the letter R, or relentless pursuit of the unattainable, relentlessly pursuing that which a panel of 10,000 judges would have said, forget it, it's not going to happen. That's the defense, because you refuse to confront and grieve the reality of the object's limitations. Relentlessly, you pursue them with relentless hope. That's the defense. What you want to evolve to, if I can see only some of you, well, then if you write it in the chat, then everybody's going to see it. Well, anyway, I hope inside your head, you're knowing the A word. I can see 3 people here, Phil and Rachel and Ed. Raise your hand if you know what the A word is. Oh, dear. Oh, dear. Oh, dear. Phil did. Phil raised his hand. Thank you,
Well,
Phil.
wait a minute, sorry, I'm not sure which slide it is, but adaptation.
It is an adaptation, but it's a more specific adaptation. Evolving from relentlessly wishing and hoping and praying and needing the object to be something that isn't. Evolving towards sober, mature.
Acceptance.
Yes, who said that?
Joanne.
Joanne, yes, Joanne Wolf, absolutely. Acceptance, thank you. That is exactly right. So thank you. All right, so anyway, so model 2 is from, thank you, that's good. From relentless hope to acceptance, which is an adaptation. Thank you, Phil, which is an adaptation. All right, model 3, there's an R word. We evolve from compulsive and unwitting reenactment to accountability. Yes, Rachel got that. To accountability. I can only see some of you. I bet all of you were thinking it. To accountability. And by way of working through the optimal stressor being relational detoxification and its projective identification, working that through. All right, so I'm with Larry, my dear Larry, in the car, and he's sort of saying, Martha, you know, you got to get a relational deficit. I say, well, listen, Larry, if we can find an R word, I said, okay, well, maybe we would make it existential humanistic. I could see that because I'd gotten some fair bit of training in both of those. Okay, existential humanistic perspective. Okay. All right, but then the defense, what would the defense be? And that one wasn't too hard. I mean, it's a story about relational deficit, but I can't reuse my words. So we agreed then that would be retreat. In essence, schizoid withdrawal, psychic retreat, but retreat. And then, but then also we could say, this is cheating a little bit because it's 2 words, but relational absence. 2, so retreat goes to accessibility. And relational absence goes to authentic presence. But that's sort of more the humanistic component. The more existential component, oh, good. Bye-bye, Molly. Thank you for being here. Same initials as mine. Anyway, the existential component has to do with from nihilistic rejection, there's the R word, of existence, to existential, which is more evolved, acceptance, there's the A word, of its dualities, polarities, complementarities, and complexities. So you can kind of, some people are more go towards the existential piece there and meaning and purpose, et cetera, et cetera. That's one of the things on my chart. And others are a little bit more about from being hidden to being found, from being lost to being connected. So that's my model 4. All right, but wait a minute. But so I'm saying to Larry, and we're looking at the LAX at the airport, and sort of like, Larry, this is all good. I got this, but I got to have the, hi, Stephen, I got to have the optimal stressor. It's got to start. It's got to be either existential or humanistic. That has to be the first word, the adjective. And I got to have a D word. You know, I just do, because that's the way my optimal stressors go, which, by the way, makes my system, somebody pointed out, RAD, R-A-D. the defenses are R, the adaptations are A. Thank you for smiling there. And the optimal stressors are D. So rad. So I said, Larry, you know, I don't think we're going to do this because whatever. So just as I'm getting out of the car, sort of triumphant a little bit, I don't have to add Model 4 and change everything and update things and so on. He said, existential dependence. That's the challenge. So like, ah, shit. Yes, that is the challenge. Winnicott's absolute dependence. Well, actually, what we didn't even get to the word absolute, but we called it absolute dependence. And I was happy enough because D was the optimal stressor. So I said, okay, Larry, that's good. I've got a fourth model, and bless you. Then I went home and I thought, you know, you can look up everything online. And so I thought, I wonder what existential dependence would be. So I look it up, put quotes, existential dependence. That was even before Chat GPT. And it said, depending upon another for one's very existence. Like, oh my God, that is Model 4. Model 4 is about regress to redo. Model 4 is about creating the opportunity for, in Balin's words, a harmonious interpenetrating mix-up between patient and therapist, or in Ofra Eschel's words, analytic oneness, benign regression, again, Balint, benign regression to analytic oneness, the two as one, harmonious interpenetrating mix-up, a blissful state of peaceful merger from lost to being found, from retreating to being more accessible, from nihilistic rejection of existence, relentless despair, to existential acceptance of its dualities, polarities, complementarities, and complexities. Whew. So that was Model 4. And that's not really so much about transference, although Modell talked about a cocoon transference. And I mean, I just love everything he writes. And he wrote about the private self, and he wrote brilliantly. And he talks about illusions of grandiose self-sufficiency, denial of object need. These will be on the chart. Illusions and the defense of affective non-relatedness. And he talked about a cocoon transference, where the experience for the therapist, certainly, is there's a little gossamer filament that connects the fragile, very frail, that connects the cocoon of the patient who's terrified, and yet terrified of getting close for fear of losing the self. Merger, terrifying, but terrified of being apart, because then there could be ego dissolution. So they're in this horrible, as Donald Burnham has said, of schizophrenics, but I think it works well here too, need-fear dilemma about intimacy. And so we want in Model 4, it's for you to be being, you know, a devoted presence and accommodating. And the optimal stressor is for them even to be able to dare to come in every week, such that, in other words, for them to depend upon you. And it involves, as Karen Marotta has highlighted beautifully, that it involves, in essence, well, this is Masood Khan, the patient needs to overcome their dread of surrender to resourceless dependence on the therapist, such that eventually it can be, this is me, be expanded from the small to the all. And Karen Marotta says, by the way, the therapist also in Model 4 needs to overcome their dread of surrender to resourceless dependence. Absolute dependence in Winnicott's words, therapeutic dependence, maybe in Ogden's words, whatever, or existential dependence in my words. And in my words, I guess that's my words. All right, so anyway, that's Model 4. All right, now Model 5, and then we'll get to the next slide in a moment. Okay, good. So Model 5, so write on your sheets, please, any thoughts you're having and so on. Model 5, a quantum neuroscientific approach, right, to overcoming analysis paralysis, neural entrenchment, synaptic conditioning, and psychic inertia. And it's this model where the language becomes more, because I'm sort of calling upon the literature of people who write about this, the language becomes more of narratives. Old, bad, these are my words, but old, bad, disempowering, outdated, distorted narratives on the one hand, and new, good, updated, more empowering, more reality-based narratives on the other hand. And so, whereas in Model 1, It's about enhancement of knowledge within, right? That should be comfortable for you, right? At this point, model 2 is provision of corrective experience. Yeah, Ed's glad I put in the word corrective there. Provision of corrective experience for. Model 3 is engagement in relationship with. Model 4 is nurturing surrender to moments of meeting between. And model 5 is envisioning of possibilities beyond. So you're juxtaposing old bad with new good. You're creating these growth incentivizing, optimally stressful mismatch experiences or violations of expectation. And my psychologist friends tell me prediction errors. And you work those through such that some say, David Feinstein, Bruce Ecker, the experts on this, say that actually the new good neurosynapses, the neurosynappses encoding the new good narratives, actually eradicate the old bad, the neurosynapses encoding the old bad narratives, so that it really is about neuroplasticity and synaptic deconditioning. Anyway, and now we go from the defense is it could be rooted to the spot, which is what my people have said I should really call it. But I get a little fancy here and I call it refractory inertia, with my realizing when it was pointed out to me that actually inertia means not only if you're stopped, you can't get started, but if you're already started, it's hard to stop. And that's exactly right. That's right. That's exactly right. So from refractory inertia, like you're stuck, this is analysis paralysis. This is when model 1 awareness, model 2 acceptance, model 3 accountability, model 4 accessibility and relational and authentic presence. Those aren't enough. And the person already knows all sorts of stuff, but quite frankly, their lives aren't going anywhere and they're stuck. And so now we sort of bring in some big guns, and we do this periodically over the course of a treatment. Oh, there's so much more I need to say. But anyway, so that we can ultimately decondition the conditioned narratives that they had sort of downloaded onto the hard drive of their subconscious or unconscious when they were very young, like from ages 0 to 6 or 7. They talk about as being some of the most important years. All right, next slide, please. I know I'm kind of all over the place here, but I guess I'm glad I gave you these slides. All right, so here's one. So the Stark method, thank you, Mark, is an integrative approach to deep embodied healing. Second order, not first order. You'd think first order would be better, but actually second order. So first order is a little more behavioral. This is psychoanalytic psychodynamic psychotherapy. So it's second order, more fundamental, more foundational change. And as I'd said earlier, incremental, which tends to be models 1 to 4, and quantum change. Model 5 is quantum neuroscientific. So model 5, a little more the quantum change. But again, we're still going from rigidity to more resilience. That's our goal. The model, one that involves the complex, it's a chaotic system, self-organizing, nonlinear, dynamical, open, self-organizing, a chaotic, complex adaptive system. One that involves the complex interplay of all 5 modes, each gaining momentum by virtue of advancement in the other 4. In essence, the models are interdependent, interactive, none more important than any of the others. Next slide, please. So it's not that you sort of do model 2 to get them comfortable with you, and then you try doing some interpretations, and then you do a little this. No, no, no. Over the course of a session, a 45-minute session period, maybe some for you 50 minutes, some 60, but over the 45-minute period, you will be continuously, and I even know the system since I came up with it. I keep getting it wrong, by the way, but theoretically the goal is to be able to shift back and forth amongst these different models. Now, this is, no, I don't want to say that yet. I'll get to that in a moment. So let me just focus on this here. So classical psychoanalytic model 1, cognitive enhancement of knowledge within, notice the preposition. Model 2, oh, bye-bye, Margie. Thank you. Oh, good, good. Okay, model 2, self-psychological. This is affective, provision of corrective experience 4. Model 3, contemporary relational, which is relational, engagement in relationship with. Existential humanistic, which is existential, nurturing of surrender to moments of meeting between. Model 5, quantum neuroscientific, synaptic, envisioning of possibilities beyond. All right, well, now I'm actually going to say out loud, and I haven't even, I shared it with one or two people, both of whom are here, but I will just say the name of my 6th model. So in my time, and I'm not yet able or ready to say anything more than just the name, but I hope it gets you excited. So in my time, I had thought to do model 6 as somatic and a more holistic approach, the mind-body approach. And a lot of people said, oh my God, yes, like do it and do it now. And so like, well, wait a minute, I have to do a decade for each of these. You know, I can't just like, whatever. And so I would have from 2020 to 2030, and we're only in 2024. So I have 6 more years before I sort of produce that. But that would be holistic, holistic one, somatic. And it would be, the defense would be restricted flow. There's the R word, restricted or retarded flow of information and energy throughout the system, to accelerated flow in order to facilitate the processing of stressors, psychological, physiological, and otherwise. That was a good one. And the optimal stressor would be holistic dyshomeostasis. There's your D word. There's the optimal stressor, working through the holistic dyshomeostasis. All right. But there were others who would say, oh, Martha, you know, I really think it should be spiritual. Model 6 should be spiritual. And so I more recently have been thinking about that, and that kind of resonates. And I happened on a fluke to have been invited to write the forewords for 2 books, big books that are out on Amazon now and doing very well, written by masters on Buddhism. And I was invited to write the foreword for both separately. They were separate. And in the process, because you want to write a good foreword, you don't want to embarrass yourself. So I had to read the books, and they were incredible. And I can't say that I became a Buddhist overnight, but I can say I wrote some really good forewords. Anyway, so I did find myself like, shit, man, this spiritual. So I thought of spiritual, and it could go from resting, there's the R word, to awakening. There is the adaptation. And the optimal stressor would be spiritual detachment. There's the D word, spiritual detachment. All right. So then I was sort of torn. What do I do? So now I'm going to say the name of my model 6. The name of my model 6 is somatic-spiritual. And the reason, good, I'm getting a little bit of a nod there. The reason I'm excited about that, you know, I don't do anything unless I check Chat GPT these days. Now, sometimes they're very nice to you and they sort of say, oh, yes, well, that's a concept that. But I do believe actually that, yeah, fine, I know some people need to leave, but it is being recorded, right? You guys have reassured me that it is being recorded. All right. So anyway, somatic spiritual, that is going to be, but I have another 6 years to develop it. So anyway, but I just wanted to share that with you. That's the first time I've gone public about that. Next slide, please. Okay, okay, now the important something here is that whereas Model 5 is so obviously about violations of expectation, mismatch experiences, and references made to repeated and dramatic and forcible and unexpected and in Model 5, juxtaposing of old, bad, new, good, old, bad, new, good, old, bad, new, good. And guess what EMDR does? I do EMDR on patients. I don't do it terribly well, but I do it. Left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right. And some of the other things, old, bad, new, good, old, bad, new, good. But anyway, so Model 5. So that is more obviously about creating new opportunities, new possibilities, new good instead of old bad, new good narratives instead of old bad ones, new good possibilities instead of old bad realities, or the enlivening and quantum possibility of what could be versus the sobering and conditioned reality of what is. And again, you're juxtaposing them, boom, 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 boom. And you use quantum disentanglement statements, by the way, to do that, but that's on another slide. All right, so Model 5 is more obviously about naming, envisioning new possibilities. So new corrective possibilities, Model 5, you see that there on the 5th. So this is one of my favorite. This is definitely going to be on my master spreadsheet. Oh, good. Helen says spirituality without a somatic presence is dissociation. Oh my God. All right, I'm sure going to be saving. Wait, and you know, you save the chat. Save chat. You know, there's 3 little dots and you click on save. Thank you. I'm definitely saving that. Oh my God. And some other people like that too. Yes. And Rachel likes that. Okay. What about soulful? Well, that's in somebody suggested soulful includes mind, body, spirit. You have to think about soul versus spirit. I do think about that. I personally prefer the word spiritual, but some people do suggest, oh God, a lot of people like this. All right. So anyway, I will look at these and I'm looking at the time. Okay, here we go. So, so corrective is important here. And hearkening back, of course, to Alexander and French's, it was groundbreaking at the time, but also really, really dissed. Back in 1946, they talked about a corrective emotional experience, which in my mind sort of telescopes models 2 and 3, but that's okay. My God, they were doing something way back before the others came along and really highlighted the importance of relationship. Hello, Phil, relationship and corrective emotional experience. All right. So model 1. So 5 corrective challenges, which is really where the therapeutic action lies. It provides the impetus and opportunity. It is the optimal stressor to incentivize graduated, so incremental or maybe quantum, advance or replacement. Well, advancement or evolving of, like a caterpillar into a butterfly, of old bad with new good, the sobering and conditioned reality of what is with the enlivening and quantum possibility of what could be. So model 1, which is a cognitive, we have new corrective information. They learn new things, they get insight, they have awareness, self-reflective awareness, which can often be corrective and can really help. I certainly know in my own therapy, there were times when like, oh my God, light bulb moments when I came to understand that the reason I was having trouble with my friend, was because of an unresolved something with my dad. It's like, oh my God. And that awareness alone, sometimes, not always, but sometimes sort of like it had a bodily component, had to do with relationship, but I sort of like that was very powerfully corrective. All right, model 2, and all of these are happening sort of back and forth all the time. Model 2, new corrective experience of both being understood and heard in a way that you've never fully been understood and heard before, and also the opportunity to grieve and be with your heartbreak and having someone there to be with you as you are grieving that it is what it is and was what it was, and you're evolving to a place of adaptive acceptance, sober, mature acceptance. Model 3, new corrective relationship. I'm sure that intuitively we all kind of get that new corrective relationship. Different from the old bad. You have the dysfunctional relational expectations. Your assumption is that it'll be same old, and you discover by way of negotiating at the intimate edge, the projective identifications, and you end up ultimately with many mistakes being made along the way. I make so many mistakes during my sessions, it's ridiculous. I mean, thank goodness they're not taped, but whatever. There are some people like in Model 5, there are a lot of people in Model 5, these folks, they let their work be taped. Are you like fucking kidding me? And then we watch it and it's sort of incredible. And it's like, wow, they do some pretty cool stuff. Anyway, we do cool stuff too, but anyway, I'm not being taped and I'd rather not be. Although some parts of my sessions have been transcribed, but that's another story. All right, so new corrective relationship. All right, model 4, I mean, I just love this. A new beginning, Michael Bolland, right? New corrective beginning. Model 4 gives us permission, regress to redo. And I've also gotten a lot into kind of energy medicine and I use devices, certain devices, kind of cool things. Scalar energy, I use that, project that into my body. That's to create a 0-point energy field. But the thing that's cool about that is since all of our cells have a potential, like a potential difference in voltage across the cell membrane, and when you, and it can get off and then that causes disease. And when you project into the body to scalar energy to create a 0-point energy field, you're kind of allowing for a reset of the cells on some level. And model 4 is like a scalar energy reset, regress to redo, so you can have a new beginning. The harmonious interpenetrating mix-up, the moments of meeting that give meaning and purpose to a life. A model 5, a synaptic, yes, new corrective possibilities. There you go. Next slide, please. Soulful, yeah, could be. Okay, so knowledge. So now this is a good one. Knowledge, and I'll be, as people maybe will email me or we'll have another time sometime where we can talk more about this, but, and it's been helpful for me, actually. I really appreciate you. between all these models, depending on where the patient is, what they bring. I think your very succinct way of characterizing the different modes. Thank you. Fantastic, useful for conceptualized formulating where you are and what you're doing. It's invaluable. Oh, thank you, Joe. Thank you. All right, so that prompts me to say the following. Okay, so it was in my course that I taught last October at William James College. And again, let me say, I apologize. I'm not teaching it again this fall, but as I mentioned to some of you, next March, a whole week, March 10th through the 14th, Monday through Friday, when it's warm in Florida. In Miami, I'm teaching in person, 15 and a half hours, 3.5 hours each day for 5 days, my Stark method of psychodynamic synergy. And you get CEs and CMEs down there on the ocean, Miami. So I hope maybe you'll come. It'd be a wonderful opportunity. And I can be engaged. You just grab me in the hall and I'll talk to everybody about anything. Not everybody, but to you all. All right. But anyway, so, oh yes. So my course. Oh, Christine's there. Spiritual and somatic is embodied, holistic and integrative. Certainly synergy. Oh my God. All right. I hope that if you save the chat, you're saving everything from beginning to end, whatever. Anyway, I keep saving. All right. Thank you, Christine. All right. So what was I saying? I got so excited about that. Oh, yes. So they taught me the following. On some level, backdrop are the N words. And I know that sounds a little bad, but I don't mean it bad. I mean the N words. So let me say the N words. The N word are the backdrop of what, at least for that period in time, the patient kind of fundamentally is. When you think about them, if you were to be talking to your supervisor or to your supervision group or whatever, the N word. So model 1 would be neurotic. Model 2, narcissistic. Model 3, noxious, Noxious, noxious relatedness. That captures it. Noxious relatedness. Rachel, you're going to nod on that one. Noxious relatedness. Model 4, non-relatedness. Models, affective non-relatedness, but non-relatedness. Retreat, schizoid withdrawal. Right. And model 5, non-action. So that's the backdrop. That's the backdrop. And that can change over a course of several months, over the course of a year or two. But that's kind of what you think. So, oh my gosh, patient, kind of a lot of narcissistic issues here, noxious relatedness, busy reenacting stuff on the stage of their life all the time and putting people off. Or model 4, you know, just really hard to access. They don't want to come every week, this, that, whatever. And model 5, you know, they've got awareness, acceptance, accountability, and accessibility. But quite frankly, they're not going anywhere. So, so that's backdrop. Those are the N words. But more foreground. So my people back in October said, make it background and make it foreground. The foreground is moment by moment as you sit with the patient. And these are the R words. These are the R words. I think they're the R words. Like I said, my computer went down and took my spreadsheet, but I think these are the R words. So the R words would be resistant. I guess these are the defenses, right? When the patient in the moment is resistant. And model 6, non-integrated. Non-integrated, huh? Interesting. All right, but in model 1, if in the moment they're resistant, you know, you're trying to sort of interpret, trying to work with them, and they're just kind of fighting you tooth and nail, resistant. Something inside them just kind of, and so on. Model 2, when they're just kind of relentlessly pursuing something and in the moment. And model 3, when in the relationship, something's being reenacted. Model 4, when they're retreating and they're not available. Maybe you said something and it caused them in the moment to retreat and made them too anxious or got them dissociated, got them disembodied. And in model 5, when they are just stuck, rooted to the spot. So, and that'll be different. That changes moment by moment. So as you're sitting with your patient, like suddenly they become, you know, you'd been engaged, all was well, you had moments of meeting, it's all good, and then you make an interpretation, and they shut down. So in that moment, you realize you overdid a little bit, and in that moment, model 4, they've retreated. You made them too anxious, and they defended by retreating. So it's a moment by moment thing as which hat you wear as you're ever busy shifting back and forth. And depending upon in that moment what hat you're wearing, you can think in terms of model 1, conflict statement to deal with their internal conflictedness to enhance their knowledge. Model 2, a disillusionment statement to facilitate their grieving and give them the experience of being able to grieve and evolve to a place of more acceptance. Model 3, a relational intervention or an accountability statement, or the rule of 3, which focuses in more on the intimate edge between the two of you, and involves, gives them a new corrective relationship. Model 4, a facilitation statement, the prime example of which would be a part of you is yearning and longing to be seen, understood, known, heard. But another part of you, terrified of being found. And there you're picking up on the need, fear, Donald Burnham's thing. You're picking up exactly on their torn apart inside, the terror about sort of intimacy, but the terror of being not close, and ego dissolution, and the loneliness, and the isolation, and the alienation, the horrible feel of that. All right, and then quantum neuroscientific, we have a quantum disentanglement statement for that. Let's see, therapeutic memory reconsolidation is about disentangling from the old and embracing the new by way of dramatic and repeated growth incentivizing juxtaposition of old bad and new good. All right, well, I'm ready maybe. I want to focus in more. I'd love to get input from you all. Can I just see what the next slide is, please, Mar? Model 4 is so Winnicott and Guntrip. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. That is exactly right. And interestingly, that's Joe said that. Winnicott is kind of, and of course, holding a nurturing environment and facilitating environment. And that's why I call it a facilitating statement. Thank you, Joe. Absolutely. And Winnicott is kind of cool because he also sort of does some Model 2 and Model 3 stuff. So I'll tell you the names of that. Oh, good. That's the next one. So look at that, folks. And then we're going to go to the next one as well. Empathy, authenticity, good. Okay, here. Model 1, Sigmund Freud. Prime example. Model 2, Heinz Kohut. Paul and Anna Ornstein, very dear to all of us and to Eva. Model 3, Otto Kernberg, Stephen Mitchell. I mean, so many others too. Owen Rennick originally. Model 4, Rollo May, Viktor Frankl, right? Didn't we all read Viktor Frankl's Search for Meaning, right? Do I have that right? Or was that Rollo May? Anyway, those books we read, along with Hermann Hesse, whatever. And then Model 5, I think I'll go with Bruce Ecker and David Feinstein. Dan Siegel. Next slide, please. Oh, yeah. Okay, good. Now this is familiar to you. Structural conflict, structural deficit, relational conflict, and relational deficit by the time I got out of the car with Larry Hedges. And then psychic inertia. Next slide, please. Oh, that's too complicated. Next slide. Neurotic conflictedness, narcissistic vulnerability. Can you feel that? Can you feel? And that informs things. Noxious relatedness, non-relatedness, non-action / non-actualization. Although actualization may be a term I have to lift and put in Model 6. I don't like to repeat myself, so a little tricky whether or not I do or don't include the word actualization in Model 5. Next slide, please. Thank you, Mar, for doing this. So we have the neurotically conflicted self, the narcissistically vulnerable self, the noxiously reenacting self, the non-related retreating self, and the non-actualized entrenched self. So that as you sort of sit there with the patient, they can be in the moment demonstrating, well, these are both actually background and foreground, aren't they? Oh, yeah. Well, they're both. Yeah, they're kind of both, actually. Next slide, please. Okay, good. So classical psychoanalytic, neurotic, Woody Allen. I mean, like, duh. Okay, self-psychological, cultural, systemic, contextual model. I don't know enough about the cultural stuff. And for me, holistic, the mind, body, and the contextual model, I would have to read up a lot more on that. Maybe that'll have to be a Model 7. But that's good. And if I can get an R word and an A word and a D word, maybe. All right. So Model 2, here we have Kim Kardashian, Kanye West, Simon Cowell. There are others too, but we don't have to get into that. All right, Model 3, George and Martha in Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, Ike and Tina Turner, Johnny Depp and Amber Heard, right? Some of us watched that trial. Fatal Attraction, the movie, Girl Interrupted, that movie. Existential Humanistic, change nothing but learn to explain why you are the way you are. Oh, that's good. That's good. He probably said that, I bet, is what Ann is suggesting. Thank you, Ann Purcell. Model 4. So John Nash, A Brilliant Mind, right? The movie about him. I met him actually. He was actually very funny. I just have to tell you a funny little story. Greta Garbo, Vincent van Gogh, and Susan Boyle from America's Got Talent. John Nash. So my mentor in holistic environmental medicine was Dr. Bill Ray down in Dallas, Texas. And I miss him terribly, I do have to say. But I would go down to Dallas and get training all the time. And I'd wear a stethoscope and I pretended I was a doctor and And I wore a white coat and I hardly knew how to put it on or use the stethoscope, but I pretended I was a doctor. And but anyway, so Bill Ray ended up getting a wonderful award that was given by people in Philadelphia. And there were only about 5 people who got this wonderful humanitarian award. And Bill Ray asked me if I would go there too, just to be with him. And of course. So anyway, at this Philadelphia Humanitarian Award, there were 5 winners. And John Nash was one of them. John Nash from A Brilliant Mind. And if people remember, yeah, A Brilliant Mind. So anyway, so Bill Ray got up and said his thing, and the others got up. And then John Nash was the last one. He got up and he said, and we remember he was a little bit, whether it's on the spectrum or a little schizophrenic or a little bit, grandiose, a little bit whatever. A brilliant mind. He'd done something brilliant and then was never able, he was chasing after it for the rest of his life, never really got there, sadly. So he gets up there and he says, I am so grateful to be getting this humanitarian reward. He said, I used to have this sort of idea that I was, God's gift to mankind. And people tried to suggest that I really wasn't. But anyway, here I am now getting this humanitarian award. And quite frankly, it makes me feel very good. And it was very funny. It was actually very engaging. I talked to him later, and he was a little bit different, but he was kind of cool. I enjoyed that. But he was really Model 4, quite frankly. Oh, is it called A Beautiful Mind and not a Brilliant Mind? Oh, my goodness. Thank you, Paul. Thank you. So it was a beautiful mind, not a brilliant mind. Thank you. I'll change that on my sheet. All right. And Model 5 is Peter Pan. What's the next slide, please? Jammed up intensity. All right. So listen, I'm eager. I'd love to hear from people. Please unmute yourselves this time. Usually I'm going to ask, I do just want to say going forward, not now. Ed's presenting next time. Thank you so much, Ed. I am going to have people putting their comments in the chat, brief, succinct comments in the chat. And the case presenter and I will work from the comments, and we may ask for input from the people, attending, but we will work from the chat is what we'll do going forward. But today is a little different, and I would love to have you unmute yourselves and talk, say stuff. I would love to hear thoughts, anything you want to say. Oh, should I exit the screen? Yeah, let's exit it. Thank you, Mark. Let's have you exit that. Oh, and I don't want to be so big. I don't want to be big. Let me see if I can get myself small. View.
You can just
gallery.
unpin yourself. Yeah.
Oh, good. I'm not big anymore, am I?
That we can change how we see you. Like we can make you big, or we can just make it a gallery.
How about that? Okay. All right. So anyway, I would love to hear. You can unspot. I think I did unspot. I did unpin. I did everything except undress, but I think I did on things. Okay, good.
Sorry.
All right. All right. So please speak up and say stuff. I love your smile. So I get to see you. That is kind of special here. Can I just say hello because I want to. Ed and Martha, I know her. Mar, thank you. Gina, hi, Gina. And Scott, thank you, Scott. Okay, good. And Anne again, yes. And Carol, hello, Carol. Sue, thank you. And Joe, thank you. And Rachel, and Paul, and Eva from the mountaintop, and Sanda, and Lauren, and Phil, and Liz, and Fiona of 3 names, and Lema, and Christine with a wave, and Karen, and Gail, and Danielle, and Helen. And there had been others, but I think they had to leave. Okay, that's good. All right, so please tell me something, say stuff. Or put in the chat if that's more comfortable.
Peter Pan. What about Peter Pan in 4?
Peter Pan
I
in
got
5.
something.
In 4. I mean in 5.
Oh, 5. Yeah, 5.
Yes.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
Do you like that?
No, I don't understand it.
Oh, he never grew up. He never evolved.
Right.
So it may not be the best choice. I'm very open to finding another one, but I sort of thought. Any
think
thoughts
about it.
I'm unable to put video on and unmute. So Mark, can you unmute her so we can get Danielle's input? Because she was talking to us earlier. Let me just see. While you guys are thinking, maybe I can unmute. Danielle, I want to unmute. I'm going to try to unmute you. I don't know. I'm sorry. I guess I can't do it. Well, put it in the chat, please. Curious if you're considered. If you've considered, yeah, I don't know much about that. What do you change? Okay, beautiful mind. Not have give my circumstances. Oh, okay, yeah, okay. I think she means she can. because their situation, not technically, technologically. Okay, got that, understand that. All right, so what do you find compelling? What, is it overwhelming? Is it exciting? Is there possibilities here?
I definitely find it really helpful to kind of put all
And
these
say who
different
you are, because
theories.
Rachel, there's
Hi,
Rachel.
hi, I'm
Mhm.
Rachel.
Yeah.
To put all these things together, I think following the slides was a little bit difficult. Partly because there wasn't like a topic heading for
Yeah,
that. Like that,
so
I
I
think would
need
be
to have a
helpful.
6th column, thank you, a 6th column. And on my original, I did have that. I didn't have time to recreate that, but that's right, like exemplars or, or
Like the
internal
challenge
state. Yeah, so that, thank you. And also what I need to do, but I'm not savvy enough to know how to do this. I want it to be not on a PowerPoint slide, but I want to do something for you guys. That's not the way it's going to be. The way I've done it was on my Microsoft Excel spreadsheet, which is now up in the heavens.
I've been working to put it in an Excel, and I can send you what I have so far.
I would like that. So anyway, and some of you have done that and so on, and sending it to me would be just so great, would be very, very, very great. Very great, very great. And Eric Burns had suggested Pac-Man for Model 2 as a sort of easy way to remember it. Any ideas or thoughts that you want to be sending me? Yes? Oh, yes, Ed, up with the hand, yes.
So I wrote this very early on when you're talking about these self-regulatory mechanisms, but as I'm thinking through what you've said since then, this is sort of a somatic anticipation in some ways, because all of our defenses have a somatic quality to them.
Just as they have a relational component to them, don't they, Phil?
Sure.
Yes.
And it occurs to me that our defenses, if we think neuroscientifically, our autonomic system kicks in when anxiety, when
Fight or flight, sympathetic nervous
So
system.
there's all kinds of those things that are ways that we're trying to protect ourselves. And it's one of the things that I'm always curious about is how do these nervous system reactions.
Maybe people can mute if they have radio in the background because we're hearing some extra stuff. So please, yeah, go on, Ed. So anyway, you're always curious about.
Well, I'm curious about how we will be nimbly going back and forth with when you have your number 6 in place. How does the somatic spiritual component show up in relationship to 1 or 2?
Good point. Good point. Good. Thank you.
I try to do that. It's sort of in my way of working, but I've tried, and I think when Rachel says she's putting it in a spreadsheet, being able to look at the things see all the relations, all the things of 1, all the things of 2, like you did in.
I appreciate that.
Will be helpful because this way it's also kind of like a set of flashcards.
Yes.
They're hard to remember.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Ed. Thank you, Heather. Some other comments, please. Yeah, the spreadsheet idea. Yeah, how I get that. Yeah, I and just a few words to sort of capture the essence. I know I'm let's see. Any other thoughts? Spreadsheet idea. Let me see. Model 6, a monk who retreats from the world. Yes, I can put the spreadsheet in this chat if people want it, but it's very much in draft form. Let's have you save it, Rachel. I'm going to work with it, and I promise I'll give you a course credit. Well, unless you can, no, maybe can we, Mara, work that? Can we make that happen if she puts it in the chat? So you put it down there at the bottom as a file, and then somehow, because it's so over my head. But if you can do that, that would be much appreciated. Well, what in what I said sort of stood out for you especially as being sort of, oh, that's cool. That's like the N words or the R words, or bioenergetics is about how, I know you and Sylvia, is about how relational and a dysregulated nervous system manifests in the body and how to engage therapeutically. Yeah, absolutely. That's good. Dysregulated nervous system. Yeah. Heart rate variability and all sorts of stuff. Yeah, I like that. And how it manifests in the body. Absolutely. And do you know that I attended a seminar last night on if you do proper breathing, which I'm quite sure I don't, but if you do proper breathing, it can literally practically change your diagnosis. There's some amazing things. Many of us suffer from hypocapnia, too little carbon dioxide. We want to have more carbon dioxide. And when we do, our brains work so much better in our bodies and our livers and our kidneys, and gets rid of our illnesses. Sort of incredible stuff. It looks like your settings won't let me put in the chat, but I'll email it to you, Martha. Thank you, Rachel. Thank you. I was afraid of that. IFS uses, yeah, the C words. Yeah, Liz, thank you. Yeah, I know they do. Calm, coherent, confident, and collected. Yeah, no, those are good. And that's nice. I like that. And of course, Dan Siegel does some lovely stuff. Oh, and Tara Brock does RAIN, R-A-I-N, right? R-A-I-N. I have to try to remember what those stand for, but anyway, and Dan Siegel does all sorts of good stuff. Thank you, need to go, Paul. Thank you, Paul, though, for your input. I know it's kind of overwhelming. Oh, being a Brit, I tend to see aspects of the object relations go in all your models. Yes, you and Phil, although maybe I haven't quite integrated models 5 and 6 yet. And again, yes, I mean, I think the way we were first trained, or maybe just sort of our bias, sort of the direction we go in, it tends to be what we sort of see everywhere. And and all of it is everywhere. And that's why I said one time a little bit facetiously that Ed and Phil, I wanted them to challenge each other to a duel. And I thought it'd be a tie. Phil saying that believing in the primacy of the relationship, with it being understood that of course everything else was also relevant. And Ed being more into the primacy of the body, with it being understood that of course everything else is relevant. And then I've certainly have had people I've worked with in individual supervision, and they're all about the primacy of meaning and purpose of life. And that and engagement and connection and meaning and existential and so on. And that if you don't have that, then like whatever. And of course the rest is important, but that is so primary. And then there's some people who would say, listen, you got to have your physical health, and you know, you got to be well hydrated and good sleep and eating nutritionally and all the good stuff, and not in pain, et cetera, et cetera. Like Freud had even said, you know, if you're in pain, if you have a toothache, it's hard to be in love. You know, so your body needs to be sort of in a good enough place, or otherwise the other stuff sort of is almost irrelevant. So what I try to sort of be about is, it is a synergy, it's an integration. There are elements of all. I don't tend myself, my own style is very much an integrative style, synergy, holism. I mean, I'm not about the primacy of a certain something. With different people, I find myself inclining more towards this or that. And let's see, Rain. Oh, thank you, Anne. Recognize, allow, Tara Brock here, Tara Brock. Recognize, allow, investigate, nurture, or alternatively non-attachment. Thank you. Another save chat. All right. And Liz, repetition of models is so helpful. You know, I mean, I even learned from repeating the models. I mean, I learn every time I present. Any other little comments here? It's just so good to see you all. There's Helen's sweet little smile there. Let's see, Gina, Mar, Scott, and oh, it's so nice to see you. And many of you faces here are presenting again and repeaters. I guess the word recidivist isn't quite the right word. You know, that means you go back to jail again. But repeaters. And obviously it wasn't that bad. Soon I'll be opening up. I'm keeping this time slot, and I'll be opening up at some point, because there are now more people than there are spots. January. So January through June will be a winter spring 2025 term. And as people have figured out, you don't have to come to every one. And the recordings will be available. Last week, that recording was archived, and this week we assume and hope that this is recorded, and that it'll. Wait, it will be. So Mar, if it turns out that you're the master something, please do let it, because it may not be recorded onto my computer. So you'll record it onto your computer, I hope, and then send it to me, right, as a Google Drive, because I don't think it's recorded on my computer, so that I can then make it available tomorrow.
I think it should be on yours.
Oh, we hope so. Okay, that's good, because I didn't go away, did I? I didn't. I thought I might, but I didn't. Thanks. I'll keep in touch. Oh, good. Thank you. It should be on yours. Okay, good. This was very helpful. All right. Well, listen, I know I'm just sort of, it just feels so nice to be with all of you. It is very nice. This is for me a very special community. And I appreciate that most of you either are showing your faces, and some of you have shown your faces in the past, and that's very sweet. And I appreciate it. All righty. Oh, so anyway, last week I went to the dentist, and I'm pleased to report that all is well, no problem. However, I get there And I was looking forward to seeing, you know, you don't necessarily look forward to seeing the dentist, but the receptionist, who also is kind of knows all sorts of dental stuff, who's been like a friend of mine, a good friend of mine for like 10 years since I've been going to that place. Anyway, and my friend wasn't there. So I asked the dentist, I say, where is she? And she said, well, she's not here. And I said, what happened? And she said, well, we had to fire her. I said, well, why? And she said, well, we found out that she had been embezzling $1.5 million from me. And they were best friends. Speaking of Miami, they would go to Miami together. They were best friends. And this woman had been embezzling $1.5 million. And even with that, initially she denied it. No, well, I maybe some accounting errors and I didn't really mean it and I'll pay it back. It's not a problem. Can't I still please work here? And fortunately, the dentist did say no, but was heartbroken. I mean, there were tears all around. Anyway, so that was very sad. So look, Ma, no cavities. On the other hand, well, so much for that. It's sort of profound, powerful. Yeah, some of you nodded. This world's filled with some people. Yes, all right, I figured out. Oh, where the menu bar goes once you share screen. Oh, define chat window. Oh, it is up at the right, but hidden. It pops up when you put the mouse on the top of the screen. Thank you, Mara. I mean, God, you guys know stuff. I mean, I said, if I were a lot younger, I'd know stuff too. But I don't know these things. I know what a computer is, but that's about it. I am going to thank you because you're still here. I'm going to take another 5 minutes, please. And I want to read you something, please. I'm going to read this. Okay. These are just a few little funny things that I'd like to share with you just as a sweet little something. Oh, you repel technology. Oh, that's funny. All right. So these are from a book called Disorder in the American Courts, and are things people actually said in court, word for word, taken down and now published by court reporters who had the torment of staying calm while these exchanges were actually taking place. Question: are you sexually active? Answer: no, I just lie there. Question: what is your date of birth? July 15th. What year? Every year. What gear were you in at the moment of the impact? Gucci sweats and Reeboks. This myasthenia gravis, does it affect your memory at all? Yes. And in what ways does it affect your memory? I forget. You forget? Can you give us an example of something that you have forgotten? How old is your son, the one living with you? 38 or 35, I can't remember which. How long has he lived with you? 45 years. What was the first thing your husband said to you when he woke up that morning? He said, "Where am I, Doris?" And why did that upset you? My name is Susan. Okay. Oh, do you know if your daughter has ever been involved in voodoo or the occult? We both do. Voodoo? We do. You do? Yes, voodoo. All right, let's see. Now, doctor, isn't it true that when a person dies in his sleep, he doesn't know about it until the next morning? Answer: did you actually pass the bar exam? The youngest son, the 20-year-old, how old is he? Were you present when your picture was taken? Just a few more. All right. So the date of conception of the baby was August 8th. Yes. And what were you doing at the time? All right, but they are, she had 3 children, right? Yes. How many were boys? None. Were there any girls? How was your first marriage terminated? By death. And by whose death was it terminated? All right, I'm sorry. I just have to read you one or two more, and then I will let us all go. Doctor, how many autopsies have you performed on dead people? All my autopsies are performed on dead people. Can you describe? Oh, no, I don't want to do that one. All right. So, and then there was here. This is a DC airport ticket agent offers some examples of why our country is in trouble. I had a New Hampshire congresswoman ask for an aisle seat so that her hair wouldn't get messed up by being near the window. She was on an airplane. I got a call from a candidate's staffer who wanted to go to Cape Town. I started to explain the length of the flight and the passport information, and then she interrupted me with, I'm not trying to make you look stupid, but Cape Town is in Massachusetts. Without trying to make her look stupid, I calmly explained Cape Cod is in Massachusetts. Cape Town is in Africa. Her response, click. Oh dear. Okay, this one. This is my last one, but this is good. An Illinois congresswoman called last week. She needed to know how it was possible that her flight from Detroit left at 8:30 a.m. and got to Chicago at 8:33 a.m. I explained that Michigan was an hour ahead of Illinois, but she couldn't understand the concept of time zones. Finally, I told her the plane went fast, and she bought that. Anyway, that's all. Anyway, thank you. I just wanted to share that with you. Thank you. It's great seeing that you all laugh. Oh, and there are two of you sitting side by side. Oh, I love that. Oh, Joe, and that's yours, family. Oh, hello
My
there.
son Matthew.
Hello, Matthew. Hi, Matthew. Oh, good to see you, Matthew.
Go. Yeah.
You know, we absolutely adore your mom.
Yeah.
And we know that she adores you, so therefore you are both very adored now by all of us.
Yeah. Oh, thank you.
Aw. All right, you all. Well, listen, this is it. I will let you go. Please feel free next week to sign in. We start promptly on the hour, and feel free, thank you, Lauren, feel free to sign in a little early so we can just relax and chat together a little bit, and then we start on the hour. And Ed, again, thank you so much for being the volunteer, and the rest of you as well. I will see you soon. And the recording, you will all get the recording on Friday, and others as well who couldn't attend but did want the recording. And going forward, you don't have to be sending a special something. I know that you guys want to be involved, and so you don't have to do special stuff anymore. Every Wednesday, look for the emails. Every Friday, look for the recordings. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Martha. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Martha.
My
Bye.
pleasure.